Some parents don't need to hit you. They don't need to kick you out. All it takes is one dinner, one insult, one silent nod from someone who should have protected you. And just like that, every feeling you had about family is gone. They say, come on, it's just family, don't make it a big deal. But what if the ones living in your house, the ones draining your peace, are the first to call you the burden? Before we dive into today's story, let us know where you're tuning in from. It's always amazing to see where our stories travel. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next twist in this journey. Now, let's listen to him from the heart. The thing about quiet dinners is that sometimes they lie. It was a warm Thursday evening in Reston, Virginia. My 12-year-old son Rowan was upstairs finishing math homework. The dishwasher hummed in the background. The soft scent of lemon oil from the polished wood floors lingered in the air. Overhead, the dining room light cast a golden hue on the table. I had set napkins, folded silverware, placed neatly pot roast resting in the center like some offering for peace. I wanted this dinner to be a reset, a way to talk things through like adults, set a plan, breathe. Instead, it became the night I gave my parents 24 hours to leave my house. Let me back up. My name's Blaze Merrick. I'm 31, a single dad, and I bought this home with years of sweat and coding contracts. Mortgage, insurance, groceries, therapy appointments for my kid, I handle it all, alone. And I was doing fine until that call came from Knoxville. Dad's heart's acting up, my mom said. We're behind on the house payments. It's bad, Blaze. I didn't hesitate. I told them to come. But I set conditions, clear ones. They'd stay short-term, they'd respect my space, and especially Rowan's, and we'd talk logistics soon. But temporary turned into territorial real fast. Within a week, the kitchen no longer felt like mine. My mom had moved my spice rack, thrown out the oat milk Rowan liked, and replaced everything with the same brand of instant coffee she drank back in Tennessee. My dad made offhand comments about how I was too soft with my son. The TV blared Fox News at full volume in the living room. My mom had taken to sitting on my reading chair like she'd claimed it. I started to notice Rowan spending more time in his room. He wasn't asking to help cook anymore, and the other night I found him on the back porch with headphones on, just zoning out. That's when it clicked. This wasn't just a favor I was doing for my parents. This was an invasion. And it was hurting my kid. So I made dinner. My way of saying, let's clear the air. I even printed a rough timeline, doctor's appointments for Dad, possible repayment options if they sold the Knoxville Place Target move-out dates. It was supposed to be a conversation. But then my mom texted Kellen. She didn't tell me. He showed up late, knocking once before walking in like this was his damn Airbnb. Kellen, my older brother who hadn't visited me or Rowan in almost 3 years, strolled in wearing loafers and a half-unbuttoned dress shirt, talking about his new venture. He sat down with that glossy grin he always used when he was about to ask for something. I got this opportunity lined up, he said, cutting his steak, tech-adjacent but real estate-backed. Just need some fuel. I already felt my pulse tick up. I knew that language, that vague, polished pitch. I'd heard it every time they needed a check signed. My mom leaned in. Your father and I were thinking maybe you could help, just until we stabilize the Knoxville house. We'd pay you back, sweetheart. Of course. I put my fork down. How much I asked, even though I shouldn't have. She said it like it was nothing. Only around $220,000. I blinked. Only my dad chimed in. It's not like you can't afford it. You live here alone with a kid. You've got that fancy job. I also have a mortgage, a college fund, therapy bills, a child to raise, I said, trying hard to keep calm. That's where my money goes, not into someone else's business gamble. You wouldn't even have that money if it weren't for us, my dad snapped. I looked at him. You think your job, your life, any of it would have happened if we hadn't fed you, clothed you. And now what? We ask for help and suddenly you're too good for us. And then the words that made my hand curl into a fist under the table. You and your kid are just freeloaders, he barked, standing now, finger aimed at my chest. I didn't yell back. I didn't need to. I looked at him, then at my mom, who didn't flinch, didn't scold, didn't show the slightest discomfort. She smiled. Actually smiled. like he'd finally said what they both felt. That's when I understood. This dinner wasn't a negotiation, it was a performance. They'd already decided I owed them. This was just the shakedown. So I stood up. You have 24 hours to leave my house. My mom's smile faded. Kellen looked stunned. I'll be changing the garage code in the morning, I said. And the office door lock. If you're not out by then, I'll involve legal. That's not a threat. It's a process. I turned to check the stairs. Rowan was still upstairs. I hoped he hadn't heard it all. But when I caught a glimpse of him peeking from the landing, wide-eyed, lips tight, I knew some things couldn't be unheard. After they scattered from the table in icy silence, I started clearing plates. My hands were shaking, but not with regret. Then I noticed my tablet was open on the kitchen counter. It was usually locked. My mom must have used it while I was cooking. Curious, I picked up my phone. Buzz, 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 dozens of notifications. My social media account had posted something. I opened the app. There it was, a long, rambling post about how children forget what parents sacrifice, complete with passive-aggressive comments about entitlement and ungrateful generations. It wasn't written in my tone. It wasn't even subtle. And it was posted from my account. I looked at the tablet again. She must have logged in. She must have done it right here while the roast was still in the oven. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. They were dragging it public. And I realized then this war wasn't going to stay behind closed doors. When people ask why I don't just let it go, I wish I could hand them a memory. Not a photo, not a diary, a moment. I was 18. The house in Knoxville was aging badly. Paint-peeling porch steps, warped yard full of mosquitoes, and regret. I'd just graduated. My grandfather, my dad's dad, had passed away 2 months earlier. His will left me $100,000, in my name. No loopholes, no trust clause. For a kid who'd grown up watching the lights get shut off for unpaid bills, it was everything. It meant tuition, a dorm room, a damn laptop that didn't freeze every time I opened a browser. It meant freedom. But then came the family meeting. I was called into the living room. My dad was in his recliner, Mom by the window. Neither said hello. We need that money, Dad said flat. No. What do you plan to do? No curiosity, no respect. Kellen's got a business idea, he continued. Real estate tech. If we get in early, it changes everything. I asked, what about my future? You can take loans, he said. You're young. You'll bounce back. That's when I understood. I wasn't a son. I was a backup plan, a contingency fund in sneakers. I said I'd think about it. That night, Kellen didn't call, didn't message. He sent me a forwarded PDF about market projections. No personal note, just numbers. My mom swore it'd be a loan. We'll pay you back as soon as it lifts off. No contract, no schedule, just hope and guilt. I left that night. I packed what I could, took my laptop and $1,200 in savings. No one stopped me. I moved to DC, couch surfed with a friend's cousin, worked 3 jobs. Waiter at a pancake house, warehouse loader, and part-time math tutor. There were nights Rowan has never heard about where I slept on a yoga mat, skipped meals, sold my gaming console for bus fare. My parents called once every few months, but it was always about Kellen. How's Kellen doing? Kellen's got another pitch. Kellen might get on a podcast. Never. How are you eating, Blaze? Never. Do you need help? So I stopped expecting anything. Eventually I landed a developer internship, then a job, then a promotion. I started saving, got Rowan into a decent school, bought a house, made rules, built a life. And I made a promise my son would never wonder if he was loved. A few years ago, during a family funeral, I spoke with my great-aunt Ruth. She was the only one who ever spoke to me like a person. She mentioned in passing that Grandpa's inheritance hadn't just gone to Kellen's startup. Turns out my dad had used a chunk of it to pay off old debts from a failed venture years prior, before Kellen ever saw a cent. I stood there stunned, realizing I hadn't just lost my future to their dream. I'd been used to clean up their mess first. They didn't just bet on Kellen. They sacrificed me to survive. It had been almost a year since I'd heard from them. In Reston, life had finally settled into a rhythm. I worked remotely as a systems analyst, clocking in by 8 a.m., done by 4:30 most days. Rowan thrived in a charter STEM school and had just made midfield starter for his soccer team. Every Sunday we meal prepped together. Every Friday night was ours movie night, board games, sometimes just music playing low while we both read in separate corners of the couch. Peace wasn't just a concept, it was routine. I kept the house clean, the bills paid early, and the emotional noise to a minimum. And I had Maris, my best friend, my compass. She'd helped me set up a 529 plan for Rowan's college fund, helped me parse investment jargon, and most importantly, reminded me over and over again that love wasn't supposed to feel like obligation. So when the messages started up again, I almost didn't respond. It started benign. Hey, just checking in. How's work going? Rowan doing okay these days. But it never stayed surface level with them. Within a week, the real ask crept in. Your father's medication isn't covered anymore. The roof's still leaking, insurance denied it again. Just a few thousand to bridge us. I sent money once. A wire transfer of $2,500 with a note that said, "This is all I can do. Please understand." But they didn't understand. They saw it as proof that I still felt guilty, that I still owed them. The numbers began creeping up. The tone shifted from, "We're grateful," to, "We need this too. You know you can afford it." And then came the call. Tuesday evening. I was sitting at the dining table with Rowan, helping him work through polynomial equations. My phone lit up. Mom. I almost let it go to voicemail. But something in me, the son part, the kid who still flinched at sudden yelling, answered. Her voice was trembling. "It's your dad. His heart. He collapsed today. The doctor says he needs intervention soon." I stood, walked toward the kitchen. What kind of intervention? She hesitated. Pacemaker, possibly bypass. It's all very uncertain. And the house Blaze were $300,000 underwater, the banks ready to foreclose. I said nothing for a few seconds, just watched the kitchen clock tick. "Blaze," she whispered, "I know we haven't always done right. But this is serious. I don't know if he'll make it another month." She let the silence swell like a bruise. And just like that, I was a kid again, watching my dad sit red-faced on the porch after mowing the lawn, clutching his chest, refusing to see a doctor. That memory, cracked and blurry, rose like a wave and pulled me under. I told her I'd think about it. Then I called Maris. She didn't even let me finish the story. They're not drowning Blaze, they're fishing. And you're the bait. Still, I couldn't shake the guilt. I couldn't ignore the voice that said, "What if it's real this time?" So I made the decision I'd drive to Knoxville, just for a few days. Not to save anyone, just to see for myself and close the door in a way I could live with. I left Rowan with Maris packed light and told work I'd be offline for 72 hours. The drive down felt longer than it was stretched out by the weight in my chest. When I arrived, they were prepared. The house hadn't changed much. Same sagging gutters, same chipped paint. My mom greeted me like nothing had happened. My dad was sitting upright, sipping coffee and scrolling on his phone. I took him to the cardiologist the next morning. The waiting room was sterile. He looked bored. The doctor was polite but curt. After reviewing the chart and test results, he said plainly, "Your father does have some arrhythmia and mild valve concerns, but we're monitoring. He's not in immediate danger." I blinked. So he's not on the brink of needing a pacemaker. The doctor shook his head. Not anytime soon. I walked out of the clinic with that answer bouncing around in my skull. They didn't lie, technically. But they didn't tell the truth either. They sold me urgency, traded on my fear. That night, over a stiff drink in the guest room, I realized something: they didn't need help. They needed leverage, and I'd just handed them the key. 2 weeks later, they were in Reston. My mom called it just for a short transition, said Dad's checkups would be easier to manage up here. Said the climate was better. Said she missed Rowan. I laid out terms, clear boundaries. Stay in the guest suite, no access to my office, respect Rowan's schedule, 60 days. I didn't make them sign anything. I should have. Because within a week, my house no longer felt like my own. and I knew I'd made a mistake that wouldn't stay contained. The morning after I told them to leave, I didn't hesitate. By 7 a.m., I had reset every password, Wi-Fi, security cameras, smart locks. The garage keypad was changed. My office door got a new deadbolt. I texted all three of them, Mom, Dad, Kellen, with the same message. The 24-hour notice stands. You may collect your things today between 5 to 7 p.m. I will be present. Do not enter Rowan's room or my office. Any violation will be treated as trespassing. Then I walked through the house and took photos of everything. The guest bathroom, the garage, the linen closet. Not out of paranoia, out of protection. Because I knew what came next. It wasn't packing. It was theater. My dad began pacing through the kitchen like he owned it, slamming cabinet doors, muttering about entitlement under his breath. My mom kept eerily quiet, hovering around corners, watching. Kellen tried to play peacekeeper, offering coffee, asking if we could talk like grown-ups. But every sentence he spoke was a thread pulling me toward negotiation, toward compromise, toward that same old pattern. Rowan started withdrawing. He stopped asking to help cook. He avoided the living room. When I asked if he wanted to go out for tacos, he said he'd rather eat in his room. I noticed he barely touched his food. Then I caught it, my mom's voice, soft but deliberate, floating down the hall while Rowan passed. Your dad thinks only the two of you matter. People don't abandon family like that. I saw red. I walked straight up to her. You do not talk to my son about adult decisions. Ever again. She blinked, smiled like she hadn't said a thing wrong. You're too sensitive, sweetheart. That night I logged into my social media and checked my activity log. There were messages, sent from my account, to cousins, to an old family friend, saying things like I'm trying to make things right. They just need a little help. It's hard seeing Dad this way. I'm doing what I can. My spine went cold. I checked the device history. Sure enough, the tablet in the kitchen had been used to verify a login. While I was out, or maybe while I was putting Rowan to bed. This wasn't just emotional warfare. This was a digital smear campaign. But I hadn't seen the worst of it yet. By mid-afternoon, my phone started vibrating non-stop. Missed calls, messages, emails, from coworkers, from parents on Rowan's soccer team, even from my HOA manager. I opened my messages and saw the Source A video, posted on my mom's Facebook page. She sat in my guest room, hair pulled back, no makeup, eyes watery. My son, he told us to leave, with no place to go. His father is sick. I don't understand. We just wanted family. We just wanted time. She made sure to say his father's heart is weak. Made sure to say we raised him the best we could. Made sure to say he has the money, but maybe not the heart. Then came the real blow I worry most about Rowan. That boy's being raised to think love is a transaction. That family is disposable. I sat frozen, watching it unfold like a slow car crash. And the comments were exactly what you'd expect. How could parents aren't perfect, but come on. If my kid ever treated me like that, I'd be heartbroken too. At Rowan's next soccer practice, I caught the looks. One mom nodded tersely when I said hello. Another dad leaned over to a friend and whispered. I didn't need to hear it to know. Then I saw Rowan glance at them. He was pretending not to notice. But his shoulders told a different story. I knew then I couldn't let this linger. Not for his sake. Not for mine. Later that night, I dug into the video, looked at who'd been tagged, who'd been prepped. And there it was, Kellen, 2 days prior, messaging aunts and cousins with eerily similar wording. It's gonna get messy. Just be there for Mom. This wasn't spontaneous. It was strategy. A play designed to corner me into looking like the villain and push me back into a conversation about money framed by public shame. That's when I made the shift. No more reacting, no more defending. I called Maris. I need a lawyer, I said. A real one. Then I opened a blank doc and started writing out everything. Every login timestamp, every text, every video download, every verbal boundary I'd given, and most of all the details of the Knoxville house, the supposed debt, the title, the real numbers. Because if they wanted to weaponize public perception, I'd counter with the one thing they couldn't manipulate: proof. And I'd use it to build the wall they'd never get through again. I didn't sleep that night. Rowan was fast asleep upstairs, but I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, staring at a blinking cursor that felt more like a warning than an invitation. I was done being cornered by emotion. I needed facts, numbers, paper trails. That's always been the language I understood best, especially when the people around me lied with a smile. The first thing I did was call the bank in Knoxville, pretending to inquire as a potential co-signer looking to support a family medical hardship. They didn't give me much privacy laws and all, but they did confirm that a foreclosure was active. The file had been opened months before my mother ever called crying about my dad's heart. I relayed the call to Maris. She went quiet for a beat, then asked the one question that cracked the floor beneath everything. Who actually signed for the loan? I hadn't even thought to ask. I'd assumed it was my father, his name, his house. But Maris pressed further. If you're going to get dragged into this, you need to know who's on the hook. Purpose of loan, terms, assets pledged. You don't even know if it's just the house. She was right. I only knew what they'd told me. And lately, everything they told me turned out to be a performance. So I booked a red-eye back to Knoxville, took 2 days off work, hired a car straight from the airport, and drove to the bank. I walked in dressed like any other working man on a Thursday morning, holding a folder of documents that proved I was their son, and I asked to speak with whoever was managing the file. To my surprise, a woman in her 50s lit up when she heard my family's name. "Oh, I remember your folks," she said. "Nice couple. Always had their checkbook ready." I forced a smile. "I'm here because they don't anymore." With enough charm and a few vague words about stepping in to help, she showed me just enough to fill in the missing pieces. The $300,000 wasn't from a single medical emergency. It was a ballooned sum interest, late penalties, consolidated lines of credit. The original loan was filed under something called working capital, not medical hardship. That meant this was about business, not health. And then came the kicker. A shell company was attached to the loan. A small LLC I instantly recognized as one Kellen had name-dropped during one of his big break monologues. A fake real estate partnership or maybe a tech startup. He'd changed the story every time. But the paper didn't lie. My parents had used the house to back one of Kellen's ventures. Again. Maris's words came back to me like a hammer. They always use you to float him. It wasn't just about me bailing them out. They were setting me up to take the fall. Again. I drove across town to visit one of my old neighbors, Mrs. Dorsey, a retired nurse who used to watch me after school. She didn't blink when I asked about my parents' money problems. They kept saying it was just a short-term thing, she said. Said Kellen's business was going to take off and pay it all back. I asked them, "You sure you should be risking your house like that?" And your mama said, "It's for family. We'll always figure it out." She paused. But they weren't figuring it out, were they? No. They were just rearranging the furniture on a sinking ship. And then came the page that made my stomach turn. One document had a section with 2 signatures, my father's as expected, but also my mother's. She wasn't some bystander being dragged along by a desperate husband. She was an active participant. She'd signed off as a guarantor after the initial loan was taken out, likely during a restructuring. Likely after Kellen's first round of failure. She hadn't just lied to me. She'd built the lie, then handed it to me wrapped in tears. That night back in my hotel room, I called Maris and told her everything. Her voice was level, surgical. "If you give them money directly, you're validating their lie," she said. "You can help if you want to, but not on their terms. Because their terms are a trap." She was right. Again. So, I made a decision. If I was going to do anything with that house, it wouldn't be to rescue them. It would be to remove the match from their hands before they burned it down again. Back in Reston, I laid it all out for Maris, the documents, the signatures, the revised terms on the Knoxville property. She helped me draft a financial risk plan, not a rescue, but a defense. We calculated what I could afford without jeopardizing Rowan's future. Emergency fund, education fund, retirement. If I moved pieces carefully, I had enough liquidity to make a play, but only if I was in control of the transaction. No handouts. No handshakes. That's when Maris referred me to Avery Halloway. Avery was a civil litigator who specialized in property and defamation cases. We met at her office, modern sharp glass walls. I handed over 4 folders, one with the video my mother posted, another with screenshots of login records from my home network, another with screenshots of manipulated DMs from my social accounts, and one final folder with the foreclosure summary. This isn't just about debt, I told her. It's about being used. Again. And my son seeing it happen in real time. Avery didn't blink. Then let's separate you from the battlefield, legally and publicly. She split our strategy in 2. 1, we'd go after the online smear campaign with a cease and desist for defamation and unauthorized access to private accounts. 2, we'd target the bank not as adversaries but as a buyer. Her plan, I would negotiate directly with the bank to acquire the debt or buy the property outright depending on what they'd accept. If they were reasonable, and most banks were, if it saved them legal trouble, I could become the legal owner, wiping out any leverage my parents thought they had. I called the bank. They confirmed they were open to selling the lien. I wired the initial escrow the next day. 3 days later, the papers were drawn. The moment I signed the purchase agreement, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt strange, like I'd just bought a ghost. That house had been my childhood prison, my parents' collateral, and Kellen's fantasy bankroll. Now it was mine, legally, and that meant I had the right to make the rules. So I did. Avery drafted a contract. My parents could stay for now, but only as tenants. They had a fixed period to repay the debt amount plus interest. Any delays, termination. Any further public slander or manipulation of Rowan eviction. No more mother's love exemptions. No more dad's health cards. This was business now, on paper, no feelings. Avery sent the contract along with a notice of change of ownership. It was crisp, final, legally sound. Then came the retaliation. First, a voicemail from my mom. Her crying was gone, replaced with venom. "Control freak," she spat. "You always wanted power and now you've got it. Hope you're happy owning your own parents." My dad followed up with a one-liner. "You'll regret this." Kellen texted me just one sentence, "Think you've won because of a few papers." That was the moment I understood. The emotions, the illness, the family appeals, they were all tools. When the tools failed, they dropped the act and showed me what they really wanted: control, ownership, leverage, and I'd just taken it from them. Then came Avery's call. "They've refused to sign the lease. They say you forged it, that they never agreed to anything." I sighed. Of course. It was never going to end with a signature, not when they couldn't call the shots. So I gave Avery the green light. Start the eviction proceedings, file the injunctions, lock down everything that could touch Rowan's safety. If they wanted war, fine. But this time I wasn't defending my dignity. I was defending my son's future. And I'd go as far as I had to make sure they never touched it again. Before the court date, I locked everything down. Rowan's routine stayed untouched: school, soccer, bedtime. I told his school and coach that all communication had to go through me, no exceptions. I documented everything: screenshots of the videos, comments, threatening voicemails, login alerts, and the messages asking for money. I stopped speaking to my parents directly. Everything went through Avery. They escalated anyway. My mother posted another video, angrier this time, calling me cold and controlling. My father left voicemails from unknown numbers promising I'd lose everything. Kellen quietly spread the same story at my workplace, that I'd gotten rich and turned on my family. Then HR emailed me. An anonymous complaint accused me of abusing the legal system to throw out sick parents. I didn't panic. I sent HR a clean packet: the 24-hour notice, proof of ownership, Avery's letters, the videos where my mother mentioned Rowan, and the text where my father called my son a freeloader. HR didn't rule immediately, but I knew the damage had been contained. The housing hearing came fast. I showed up on time, dressed plainly. My parents arrived playing their parts, my mother clutching loose papers, my father leaning heavily on a cane. Avery told me to stay quiet and let them talk. She laid out the timeline. Simply, they were guests without a lease. They crossed boundaries, they insulted my child, they were given notice, and they chose to stay while attacking me publicly. She submitted the videos and the messages. When the judge asked why they hadn't left, my mother spoke in circles about family and reconciliation. Then my father snapped. He said I owed them. He said I had money and should pay. That was it. Avery pointed out that this wasn't a family disagreement. It was financial coercion and unlawful occupancy. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The court ordered them to vacate my home by a set date and warned them against further harassment. Avery also secured limits on contact involving Rowan. Before we left, she submitted notice regarding the Knoxville property. I was the legal owner. If they refused the tenancy terms, their removal would follow. My mother went pale. Kellen left early. I stayed seated, breathing for the first time in weeks. When the house was finally empty, I changed the locks for the last time. I collected spare keys, wiped unknown devices from the system, and reset the cameras. I rearranged the living room so Rowan could feel at ease again. Friday pizza night came back like it never left. They didn't leave quietly. They left cluttered, guilt-soaked notes and one last reminder about my father's heart. I photographed everything, boxed it up, and sent it to Avery. I didn't read the letters twice. I flew to Knoxville to inspect the house I now owned. It was a mess, one room stacked with Kellen's failed paperwork, unpaid bills, and half-finished plans. I hired cleaners, made basic repairs, and sealed the boxes tied to Kellen for legal review. In those papers, I found a draft agreement, an unsigned proposal meant to transfer loan responsibility to me. A place for my signature sat blank. It confirmed what I already knew. This was never about help. It was about shifting the burden. Avery added it to the file. My parents moved into a small apartment. My mother took a part-time job. My father did bookkeeping for a local shop. Kellen moved in with them, still chasing the next opportunity. That was their choice. I blocked their numbers and accounts. Avery became the only channel. Any future contact would be on clear terms with me present or not at all. One night, Rowan asked if his grandparents hated him. I told him the truth without blame. Some adults confuse control with love. When they lose control, they get angry. None of it was his fault. He wasn't a burden. He was the reason I built this home. I used to think family meant endurance. I was wrong. Peace can't be built on humiliation and pressure. I didn't win by hurting them. I won by removing their access to my life and my child. Now when I drive past the old Knoxville house and see bikes in the yard, I feel nothing. It's just a house. Home is where Rowan laughs. Home is where I no longer have to ask for peace. There's a moment that comes not with triumph, not with grief, but with a quiet kind of knowing. The kind that settles in your bones after you've walked through fire and somehow come out still yourself. Not untouched, not unscarred, but intact. I felt that moment the night I sat across from Rowan, watching him fall asleep with his favorite blanket tucked up to his chin in the house I built in the life I finally reclaimed. Looking back, it's strange how long I mistook endurance for love. I thought keeping the peace meant staying silent. I thought being a good son meant absorbing the blows, smiling through the insults, tolerating manipulation because it wore the mask of family. But the truth is, there's a cost to that kind of tolerance, and it's often paid by the next generation. I saw that cost the day my son looked at me and asked if he was hated. That question broke something open in me I didn't know was still holding on. I used to believe I could earn their respect if I just worked harder. If I gave more, bent more, forgave more. But some people don't want peace. They want power. And if you don't recognize that early enough, they will disguise control as love, guilt as guidance, and exploitation as tradition. So no, I didn't fight this battle just for me. I fought it so Rowan would never mistake cruelty for care. So he would grow up knowing boundaries aren't selfish. They're necessary. That love without respect isn't love. That family without safety isn't home. It's easy to think the hardest part is the confrontation, the court filings, the slammed doors, the voicemail threats. But the real battle happens after when the dust settles and you're left sitting in the silence wondering if you did the right thing. That's when the guilt creeps in, the old programming that whispers, maybe you were too harsh. Maybe they were trying. But guilt can be a liar. And peace, real peace, is quiet but never cruel. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't owe access to people just because you share DNA. Blood may start a story, but it doesn't get to dictate how it ends. Respect honesty and accountability. Those are what makes someone family. And if they can't meet you there, you are allowed to walk away. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Forgiveness. I've come to realize doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it just means releasing the weight so you can walk forward without dragging the pain behind you. I don't need my parents to admit they were wrong. I don't need an apology wrapped in conditions. What I've chosen is to live in a home where love doesn't come with strings attached. Where my son can grow up knowing he is wanted, seen, and never ever a freeloader. They once called my child a burden, but he became my reason. They tried to strip me of stability, but they reminded me how fiercely I'm willing to protect it. In trying to break me, they revealed exactly what needed to be rebuilt. I think that's the value of endings like these. They create space for something better. Not perfect, but honest. Something that doesn't just survive. Something that finally gets to grow. And maybe that's the lesson in all of this. You can mourn the family you wished you had, and still refuse to settle for less than what you and your child deserve. You can draw a line in the sand and still walk away with your dignity. You can love someone and still say enough. Because at the end of the day, real love doesn't demand your silence. Real family doesn't build itself on control. And peace, real peace, doesn't require your pain as proof. Sometimes the deepest shift happens quietly, not when someone says sorry, but when we choose to stop waiting for it. Stories like this remind Chung Ta that it takes courage to protect what's good, especially when the ones hurting us once taught us what family meant. It's never easy to close a door that's been open for years, even when that door has let in more pain than peace. But maybe the real act of love is learning to say this far, no further. What stays with me isn't the confrontation or the legal wins, it's the quiet strength of someone who stood their ground without losing their kindness. The way he made space for healing without needing revenge. The way he answered cruelty with boundaries, not bitterness. There's something deeply human in that. Something worth holding on to, especially in a world where people so often confuse silence with love. If you found a piece of yourself somewhere in this story, we'd love to know. And if these moments speak to something in you, subscribing is a way to stay part of this space we're building. One story at a time. We'll be back soon. Until then, take care of your peace, and of those who protect it with you.